a superhero father to two beautiful girls, a husband, a globetrotter, a ultra marathoner, a guy who loves to run in all weathers, all altitudes, different countries. Please put your hands together or likes together wherever you're watching or listening. Tahir Merchant. Tahir, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking out time and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you, Nishan. Thank you for hosting me. It's a pleasure.
It is an honor to have you with us. If you guys are interested in knowing what goes behind the psychology of ultra runner, what does it take to run 100 kilometers, 200, 400, 500 kilometers in different weathers? What does it take? What nutrition, psychology, equipments? What does it take to do these ultra races? Then stick to the till the end of the show to get value out of Tahir. All right. Tahir, my first and very simple and basic question that most people continue to ask us as a coach is, does running help in losing weight? Let's start with that.
Just like any other person, I started my running journey to lose weight, and it does. It does. Running does help you lose weight if you're mindful in eating. If you're mindful in watching the calories that you take in, running is not. It's not just the magic pill. So there's the nutrition balance that also helps balancing in and helping anyone achieve their goal of weight loss. So it's a great way of losing weight. But
Yeah.
yes, you have to also watch what you take in.
Yeah. I mean, let's double click on that and understand the mechanics of losing weight. Then most of the runners, like even me included, I started my running journey about 16 years ago. Even I was obese category 2. I was 113 kilos, just a 16-year-old boy, not getting out of that 10th 12th kind of a scenario when you're going for your tuitions and you have all sorts of excuses, you're appearing for your examinations, you tend to put on weight. But then I started running, and over a period of 1 year made my mistakes and ended up losing a lot of weight, close to 32 kilos. But I want to understand 32 kilos in a year of running. But then before I add to the nutrition part which you mentioned, I would want to know from you that you also started your journey of running because you wanted to lose weight, right? And so how did you start and how did you discover running there?
So I used to do powerlifting at the gym very often, and it so happened that my wife and me decided that she wanted to join the gym as well, and there were no memberships open at that time in my gym. So I said, hey, you know what? I'll run with you around the track, which is very close by my house. So that way you can achieve your goals, and I can give you company. So of course, the product of that was she achieved her goals, but I seem to have achieved much more. Uh, I I I started to enjoy uh, running as a sport. The byproduct of it, which is weight loss, was no more important to me. It all I The last time I think I checked my weight was in that year was probably when I was running around the track for maybe about 6 months, once in 6 months. But as time flew, things changed. The entire equation changed. It was no more about weight loss. But since this topic is about weight loss,
Yeah.
uh, in a year, I used to lose about 1.5 kgs a month. It was not a very very high drop in my weight, but it's because I'm a big foodie, and I can't compromise on that. I have to eat well, and that's how I am. That's my build, and so if anyone wants to, I mean, for me. I lost what 18 or 19 kgs in the first year of running. So that was the start. And once, I'm sure even you experienced it, once you lose the weight, you get so much of confidence and you just want to push more and more and more. And then your goals go higher and higher and higher. Then it's it's no more, like I said, no more about weight loss. It's about 10 kilometers. I want to do 21. I want to do 42. I want to go higher.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happened with me. And, after I lost that weight, I started enjoying the sport, and then I started to take the sport a bit more seriously as well. I wanted to see how I could, travel the world, travel to different places, and still enjoy my sport. So that's in short what I did, in these
Yeah.
8-9 years.
Yeah. It's like Steve Jobs says that you can never connect the dots moving forward. You can only connect the dots moving backwards, meaning you never really know what you're capable of when you're going on that journey, right?
Right.
I'm very sure, like when you started and when you were doing runs around the track, you would not have imagined that you would become a globetrotter, right? Doing races, 100 kilometer, 150 kilometer races across the world when you started out. But I think that's the magic of running, or any other endurance sport for that matter, that when you start, you do not know where you are gonna be in a few years, but then that journey itself is so fulfilling and so enriching, and every day is a challenge, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how do you plan your races when you're looking at a calendar or the upcoming calendar? How do you what goes in your process? What is the process when you're planning out your calendar for the year?
So I'll flash back a few years back and to date. So when I initially started, I was just like any other athlete, very over enthusiastic. I wanted to be at every race every month. I wanted to finish every 10K possible in the city, every 21K that was hosted by Procam. It's just, it was all a mess. But hey, you know what? It that's the initial joy that you get, right, when you're starting out. You want to achieve those medals, you want to do things. But as you go more deep into the sport, you mature more, and once that happens, you start to question your race choices. What is it that you want out of that race?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? So I have done varied distances, and I have done it in in roads, in mountain terrains, in deserts, and things like that. So now when I look at my calendar, I try to see is that what are the races that are going to put me down on my knees? What are the races which is really, really, really going to give me a knocker? Is going to be so challenging that it's going to give me a fight with myself. So those are the kind of races that I look for. I don't do more than 4 to 5 races in a year, because over a period of time I've also understood that how important it is for our body. You do 3 sports, 3 disciplines, so you must know that better than me, that our body needs a lot of time for recovery. And if we push our body beyond that certain point, you'll end up with injuries.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest challenge in the sport. Once you have an injury, it's it's like a nagging thing that you keep getting, and it takes time to go away, but it's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do 3 or 4 to 5 races in a year, very terrains, very distances, and in very temperatures also.
Yeah.
And mostly self-sustained races. So I don't look for races where there is, every 2 kilometers there's a guy with a Bisleri bottle or something like that. It's your entire distance. It's like a pilgrimage, like I tell people. I go on a pilgrimage, for 5 days. I go across, fly across the continent just to do that.
Yeah.
To challenge myself and see if I can, make it out alive after at the end of that race. That's what I look forward to.
This is why I introduced you as a superhero dad, going out there, putting in the hard work, challenging yourself in different altitudes, temperatures. Couple of races which you have done in the past, which were most challenging for you in terms of terrain, and what was the terrain? What was the temperature?
Sure. So I think the first brutal shock that I got in my life was at the Everest. So I'm a guy who's run in Ladakh, who's been on the roads, been high altitude, but has not got such a rude shock of, trying to use all fours to climb boulders and things like that. So that's what Everest taught me, is that,
what is Everest for the listeners who are not conversant?
So I did a race in 2018 called the Mount Everest Ultra Marathon.
Okay.
It's a 63-kilometer race. So to get to the start line, you have to trek 7 days. That is basically from the start point at Lukla in Nepal to the Mount Everest base camp, which is at 5,340 meters in altitude, if that helps. So from there, then you run around the base of the Mount Everest, and you get into the trails, and it's scenic, it's enjoyable, everything is good, but it's like I said, one of the most challenging races that I have done. It's basically because the terrain was very, very rocky. The climate was not predictable. It would snow suddenly, it would go to sub-zero, it would and the climb is, you have to use all fours to climb. It was so difficult. So that was one of the races. Then the other races, one other race that I can recollect is when I was in South America, in Peru. I was crossing the Mount Ica. I was crossing the Ica Desert, and we had sand dunes that were some of them were 600 to 800 meters high.
What are you saying?
Yeah. So the point is that your mind gives up just looking at the sand dune.
Yeah.
Right.
And 600 to 800 meters is not an elevation. It's actual distance.
Correct. Yes.
Wow.
So we I mean, I was trying to figure out how am I going to do this. I would get to one top, and then I would just see that there are like number of ones that we have to go across.
Wow.
And that was in the long stage. So it was
This was a hot desert?
It was a hot desert, yeah. It was a hot desert.
And what were the temperature like? Which month?
So we were there in Ica, I think in the month of October.
Of 20?
Of 2019. 2019, yeah. 2019, and the temperature, it was pretty hot. It was at the dunes, it was, I would say, about 35 plus, but it also got windy, so it was we had a little bit of relief.
Yeah.
But apart from that, just putting your foot in and hoping that it doesn't sink in and taking the next step, I think that's challenging. Is to know how to stay afloat. And it's just not physical trauma that you have to go through. It's also the mental trauma,
Yeah.
And there's skeletons all over the place. So it's through such tracks that I don't think any other human on a regular basis would take.
Let's rewind a little. What do you mean by skeletons?
So
bones.
There were actual bones of animals. Animals. I think it would be. I don't know how many years ago, but you find all these things, and they psych you out a little bit.
I mean, guys, if you're listening or watching this, when we are doing a 10K, 21 or 42K in a city, we want every marker. We have at every 1-2 kilometers, there's someone handing you out food and electrolytes and water and whatnot. And if you are running in a TMM or a Bangalore run or a Delhi marathon, you have thousands of cheer leaders, people cheering you on. And then there is this marathon which you have done, ultra marathon, where you have skeletons and 800 meter high sand dunes. I mean, it's very hard for an urban runner to even imagine this. Next time, if you're running any of these the regular events, people don't lose your shit and say that वहाँ पे पानी नहीं था, I did not find this and that. There are people like Tahir who are running in these kind of inhuman conditions.
It's fun. It's fun. It's like you earlier said that I think we all like to challenge ourselves at some point to soar higher. So I think this is a way for me, and believe me, once you're in these kind of places, it's nothing but a meditative state your body gets into, because after a point, Nishant, your legs don't do the job, no matter how much you've covered. So let's say you run 100 plus, you run 150. After that, your legs don't do. It's just your mind that does the walking. It's not your body is given up long back.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, so I've done a fair bit of races. I've even run in Solang in India, then the Sky Ultra, then I've run in Ladakh for multiple years. I've trained in Ladakh, so I enjoy training in Ladakh more than running in Ladakh.
Wow.
So I spent 2 months in a year so I was there in winter training in February, and again I'm going back in August, so 2nd of August. I'll be there for about good 30 days.
Oh, all right. A question which I'm sure will come up in people's mind is, how do you manage your trainings, long trainings, with your business and jobs? How do you do that?
That's a great question. So what happened was, I used to do I come from a family of businessmen. My grandfather was a businessman, my dad is, and I joined the family business. So about 5 years ago, when I had this thought that I would want to travel to places, and this is what I want to do, and I may not be able to physically be here, so that's the time I started working on an online platform for my business. I built that e-commerce space. I built that that client database, the client base, so I could work from anywhere that I am. And today, that is what helps me. So irrespective of where I am, I can still connect with anyone and everyone, because I have my business I'm in the e-commerce space, and also I have a great team. I have a very supportive team at work who know that this guy's not going to be around for 6 months in a year, so let's just leave him out. It's very important to balance your work with this. Of course, this is passion. This is a great sport, but let me tell everyone that running these kind of races is a very expensive sport. So if you get into things like this, make sure that you worked hard enough to ensure that it's not a pinch in your pocket. This is how I do it.
No, this is a very important area of discussion which comes up, because when you start out, you are doing the local races and it's all manageable and easy, but triathlons, doing Ironmans or any of these international events that you continue to do every year is an expensive affair. I mean, to put a number to our listeners is, if you want to do a triathlon or an Ironman race and you have to train for a year and you need to travel to an international destination, you would need around 4 to 5 lakh rupees for you to train for it, register for it, get the necessary minimal equipment for it. I'm sure the price range for each of these races would be similar for you. What kind of range is it?
Yes, it's pretty similar. It's about 4 to 5 lakh. You're spot on.
You of course you're traveling with your wife, and there's a crew, and there's a travel and all of those visa, stay, those kind of expenses continue to add up.
So that depends on how you plan to do it. So there are certain races that cost me even 10 lakh rupees. It depends where you do it, what is the condition, how remote it is, how easy it is for you to get from where you are to that place. Even the travel costs a lot. The race fee also costs a lot, because the race fee doesn't just include registration, it includes your insurance, it includes heli evacuation, it includes there's a lot of factors that come into place, because having all these facilities in the remotest part of the world is quite a challenge for any organizer. So that's what makes this kind of racing, the ultra marathon racing in the mountains or in the deserts, such an expensive affair. So any race on an average is not less than about $6,000 to $7,000. So that's about 4 to 5 lakhs.
It's they say running is the new golf. That's totally true. And the only difference is that instead of caddies and golf cart to put your move your equipment, you're literally putting yourself in that misery and just to get the joy out of it. So yeah, but it's I mean, coming back to the point of having a sustainable income which supports you, a sort of an ecosystem that you have to build around to pursue this passion is very important. You might have heard about 4-hour work week by Tim Ferriss. I think if you are a perfect example of that, living, having that kind of a setup that you have been able to build, a process, a system that supports you. That is super important, pursuing these kind of passions, right?
Yes.
So even for listeners, right, if you are becoming serious about these kind of races, it could be ultra cycling races also. Couple of weeks back we had Lieutenant Colonel Bharat Pannu. He recently broke 2 world records in cycling, cycling all the way from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, and then fastest person to do Manali to Leh on cycle. And when he was also mentioning, about the cost structures of these kind of races, but having that support system, that like he has a support system of the Indian Army, so that kind of support is there that way, and he has a good crew to rely on to do these races. So it's very important for all our endurance viewers, listeners, is that build that kind of a support, that process that allows you to come out of your comfort zone and break that normal norm of 9 to 5 and then pursue these things, right?
Also, I would like to add in here, Nishant, is that, see, ultra running has still not matured as a sport in India. It is happening. There are a lot of races. When it comes to financial decisions, I would also like to say is that I have seen a lot of things go wrong with a lot of people, who just want to jump into races and be there. Always remember that, you have a family. If you're married like me, I have a wife, I've got 2 children. So, take risks, but don't be reckless.
Yeah.
Okay? Always remember that take risks, but don't be reckless. Always remember that there are, people who are there because of you, who are always waiting for you when you come back home. So learn to also divide your time. It's not always about running or cycling or swimming. Give time to your family, because that's what's most important at the end of the day. So I run a lot when I'm training, but when I'm not training, believe me, I do everything that a runner should not do. I eat everything, every possible junk that I'm not supposed to eat. I don't lift my nutritionist's calls. I don't go to the gym. I eat ice creams all day long. I do everything. Have fun, don't get too serious in life.
Yeah. That's super important. Understanding the real force behind your pursuits. That's super important.
I wouldn't have been able to do all of this, Nishant. I'll be honest. Had I not had my wife behind my side, telling me that, hey, you know what, I have your back, just go and do what you want. So it makes a lot of difference, when you have a partner like that, telling you that, go. And even my kids, they're like, we're so proud of the things that you've done. I said, I haven't done anything. I just do things that I
just run.
I just run, it gives me joy. That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's nice. Okay, moving to the important part of conversation, which is around coaching, training, and preparing for the entire, the process. What is your process? What are your thoughts on a structured training program? Is it important? Should people invest in training?
So a lot of people ask me this question is, can I follow a plan that's available online? Why should I go and pay my coach a few thousand rupees a month? Or why should I follow a structured training program? What you get off the net is not necessarily meant for your body. It's a very generic program. It may be meant, there are different levels of training. There's a beginner, there's an intermediate, there's an advanced, there's a pro, there's an elite. So before you understand that, I would make it very short, structured training. In that, you're not only you're not only Hello, sorry.
Yeah, there was a...
Am I audible, Nishant?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
There was a
Yeah.
lag. Can
Yeah.
you repeat that again?
So I said the only way forward is through a structured training. Why a structured training is because you know you have someone who's guiding you as to how you want to move forward, right? Not how everyone it's not just like a very generic plan. It's tailor-made to what you want to do and how you want to move forward. It's understanding your body type also. It's very, very important. Not many people understand that there's a lot of science that goes behind any sport, right? It's just not running the distance. It's just not about cycling the distance. Anyone can do that. You don't need, it's not rocket science. You don't need a coach for that. But if you want to improve, if you cannot measure what you do, you can never achieve success.
That's right.
And to do that, you have to follow a structured training program, because that helps you not only build your confidence, but that helps you go from one level to another level. So I have seen that in myself, right? So when I set goals, I would just run around the stadium, continue doing that, right? But when I wanted to move next level, I said, hey, you know what? I can't do this on my own, because I'm working so hard, but I am not getting the desired output. Why is that, right? So you can train like a horse, but but if you don't train well, you'll perform like a donkey and not like a stallion, right? So let's put it that way. So
very well put.
So if you train right, and you'll definitely be very well on race day, or even if you don't want to race, even if it's your fitness goals, right? Even if you want to lose weight, I would say go to a nutritionist, go to a coach, go to a fitness coach. After all, what is it? You're investing in yourself, right? That's the best thing that anyone can do.
Yeah, and in fact, in the overall scheme of things, these coaches, teachers, guides would not even be about 20-25% of the overall costing.
Absolutely.
Or in terms of, but the guidance that you get. I have personally worked with a lot of coaches as an athlete. I am a coach now, which I'm helping out people. And there are so many finer things, like you just mentioned, so many matrices that one tends to overlook, because you are on an athlete's high or a runner's high. Every time you go out, even if you're doing like a 5K or a 50K or whatever that number is, you would always finish with a feeling of either a high or disappointment. There is actually very little in between that you are looking at. Yes, you may look at your heart rate or a few other dynamics, but then looking at the macro data, the micro data, and making sense of the data and give insightful information to the athlete is very important. Having that helicopter view as to how you are performing, the RPEs, your general wellness, your psychological factors, how your nutrition is pacing up, your in-race nutrition, those kind of things. A person who's having a bird's eye view would be able to give you a slight better sense of it.
Yeah. And I think once you also join a structured training, or you have a coach, that like for me, I don't know what I would do without my coach. So anything and everything I discuss with him, and there's so much improvement. I can't even tell you. Like I feel at times he knows me better than anyone else. I just to share an example. After my injury, when I was coming back, I had put on a lot of weight.
Who are you working with now?
I train with Coach Pramod. He's the head coach of Jayanagar Jaguars. So I train with him. So when I was coming back, I told him, you know what, coach, I think although I've taken a break, but I can wake up and run a marathon any day I decide. So he's like, you think so? I said, yeah, I know, I can do it. He says, okay, do it and then catch up with me. It took me 2.5 weeks to wake up actually and go and run a marathon. It just didn't happen. This is what sometimes you feel you know it all. It just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, outside support, a person who understands you as well as your data points and is able to make a sense of it, and then push you out of that comfort zone every single week is important. Because then, as an athlete, what happens is there's always a tendency to either overtrain or undertrain.
Yes.
And to be able to mix it up, having the ability to build in the important different variations of workouts, that's also super important. And that outside view, a coach is able to sort of certainly do that for you. And another good thing that is happening now, which is probably not so prevalent in India, was that an ecosystem of people is getting developed now. People are understanding, athletes are understanding the importance of nutrition, coaching, and I've seen a uptick in this area as well, that people are able to understand ki, okay, this is not the only race that I have to do. Or there was a time when people used to run just a couple of races across the year. They would register for an international race or maybe a TMM, and then just train 3 to 4 months before the race, and then then not getting the desired results. Ki, Arey, last year I did 450, but this year I could do 445. But now that people have started understanding, and more people are going for the training programs.
Yeah.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So that so training program also, whether it is goal specific, like you just put it, right? Whether it is for your TMM or it is for a personal fitness objective, there's no harm. There's only you can only move forward, and you have to look at it this way: is that you learn so much about yourself. You tap areas which you wouldn't know that you could tap.
True.
Right? You get into zones that you didn't know that existed. Right? So you get into that zone of discomfort, and for me or for anyone, sometimes you realize that you actually enjoy that.
Yeah.
But on your own steam, you'd be like, "Arey, yaar, chhod do yaar. I would just do 10 kilometers, bas ho gaya, aur kitna bhagega?"
Yeah.
But when you're following a structured program, okay, your goals are set. You have to achieve it. This is what you have to do. It's all laid out, and that's
all right. Okay, so last 3 weeks actually, you have been eating marathons for lunch, then doing half marathons for dinner. You recently completed a race called Hell 480. Hell 480, meaning you completed 480 kilometers in a certain number of days.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, and why were you literally eating marathons for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
So this is a race that originally happens from the Mall Road in Manali all the way up to Shanti Stupa in Leh.
Okay.
It covers 480 kilometers. So the reason why I signed up for this race was at start I was very excited. I thought, what? Let me do 100 miler, 100 kilometer, a 72, 50, and then I would finish the race in 5 days. But then I thought that, this is going to be even better if I have to run a marathon every day. How would that be, And then I said, I know that I can even do that, but how if I make it shorter but run longer? So I was averaging about 30 to 35 kilometers every day for 17 days.
Wow. 30 to 35 kilometers for 17 days straight.
For 17 days straight. So I found this more tiring, more challenging, and I think I have never trained like this before, or I have never participated in an event like this before, where I could do this. 30K. It took a toll on me. I would have rather done that 5 days and got it over and done with. But I was like, let's try something new, because you always know, right, that you could probably do a few hundred kilometers over a span of days. If I do it 24 hours, I could do it. Another challenging part of this race was I did 400 kilometers on a treadmill. So I think that drained me mentally so much that I haven't got back on the treadmill after I finished this race. So that's another thing that for me, it was an achievement. It was like I smashed a particular a goal that I had. I didn't think I would do more than 200, but thanks to the lockdown, I was able to do it. Yes.
Wow. 17 days straight, 35 kilometers, doing 80% of the distance on the treadmill is commendable for sure. I think running on a treadmill or in a closed space or a small space is very challenging mentally, right? I mean, just there are no change of sceneries. You're just going straight in one. Yeah.
I watched like 20-30 dubbed Telugu movies, Tamil movies, because after a point I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, so you I mean, you're running like 4-5 hours a day, right? Every single day.
Yes. And certain days I couldn't run, so I was walking for 6 hours a day.
Wow.
So
I mean, what was the post-run, ritual like? What were you doing? What were you eating when you're literally running for 5 hours every single day, 17 days? What were you eating during the run and post-run, and how were you recovering every day?
So I was eating real food. This race I had taken in very little supplements because the distance for me per day was not that high, which I would generally do if it was a race where I would really have to look into my nutrition.
You mean the longer ultra races that you've done in the
past? Correct. Okay. Yes. So the multi-day races, generally they have they go over 42 and then they spike up to 85. So this was still manageable, Nishant. It was not it was manageable for the first 10 days, then it all went haywire. But coming back to the nutrition, I was eating real food, whatever was cooked at home. So it was very simple. I would have my eggs in the morning, breakfast. I would have some chicken, some protein in the afternoon, and night it would just be soups. But when it came to recovery, how would I be able to wake up and run the same distance without having muscle fatigue the next day? So this is where your nutrition comes into play. So I use the Fasten Up India BCAA and Gutamin.
Yeah.
So I mix them together and I have a drink. I have a 1 liter drink. I used to have that every day. So even when I'm not training, I still have that. That it reduces a lot of muscle fatigue. And also I have recovery tights which I use from SEP. So these are a couple of things that I had taken care of, to ensure that I'm able to get back up on the treadmill the next day. Because also you have to remember, with the treadmill, it's not just about of course nutrition is important, but it's also about ensuring that you don't land up with an injury.
Yeah.
Because if you're running too long on the treadmill, because my treadmill doesn't have that bounce, it's not a very expensive one. It's a very humble entry level treadmill, so it's not very fancy. So I had to make sure that I was able to do it continuously.
But so you did stress test it to its limits, I'm sure. They don't make it for 35-40 kilometers non-stop. I'm sure the motor would be overheating every single day, right?
I would have to reset it. I would have to reset it every 2 hours for 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, stop, again do it. Then it would be again 1 hour, then again.
I'm sure someone would be wondering what brand it is.
I had a lot of questions.
Yeah. What brand it is? I want to know.
Yeah, it's from a company called Aerofit.
Okay.
Aerofit is, so I had bought it.
Aerofit, and which model would it be?
I can't recollect the model number. It's their lifestyle series.
Okay.
It's got a you can use it for 2 hours without the motor heating up. Continuously for 2 hours. So
people can probably head to your Instagram page, Tahir Merchant, and find that the pictures.
Yeah.
You used to post a few pictures.
Yeah, there are quite a few.
You didn't stop. The treadmill used to stop, right?
Oh God, I had days like that where I would be like, wait, I need to run some more, And what happens is, Nishant, you give a break in the momentum.
Yeah.
Then it's very difficult to restart. Because as it is, you're on a treadmill. It's not like you're somewhere out on the road where, you can stop and then just start running again. So much motivation to get back on the treadmill and then start it. Yeah.
And so coming back to the recovery part of these longer runs every single day, did you also do anything else in terms of massages or foam rolling or just simple rolling or mobilization?
So I did a lot of stretching after my runs.
Okay.
So after my runs, I would stretch. I would, I would do a lot of foam rolling also. But I couldn't get any massages or anything done because we were in the lockdown.
Lockdown, yeah.
So as much as I would have wanted it, I couldn't. I would on the weekends go to my spa, get it opened, and just use the sauna there. Get the steam. That's the only thing that I could do. But apart from that, nothing much really. So it was just sticking to the basics. Because that's all that you have. In this lockdown.
Sure. What are your thoughts on the new age recovery devices that we are getting these days, like a Theragun or the fancy rollers, in which you can put your body part and then roll it from all sides possible, or you have these devices where you can put your feet and then it heats it up from the inside. Have you tried any of these?
I've always believed in keeping it very simple. I don't like to get it too complicated. So I've not tried any of these devices, but I have seen it. And there's it looks like there's a lot of development in the space. There's a lot of new things coming out. So I also saw a video of the gun. Someone wanted to send it to me, that one that you can put it on any body parts. It looks interesting. These things are of course with times products evolve. Technology evolves, so you're bound to have new stuff. So I would love to try some of those products. Probably get one of them. I would like to get that Theragun, the one that you mentioned. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of the videos of that.
Sponsors, reach out to him if anyone's watching. All right, so I am actually enjoying our conversation so much. We have actually shot over our stipulated 35-40 minutes kind of a time. But moving on to the last section, which I call the rapid fire round. I'm going to be asking you a few questions in quick succession. You are supposed to answer them as quickly as possible. And disclaimer, it's not rigged. I've not shared any of these questions or the previous questions. These were actually just two runners having a conversation. All right. Are you ready, Tahir?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Question number 1. You have run in different altitudes and different temperature ranges. What is your personal favorite altitude or type of terrain?
Definitely Khardungla top. There's no place like getting
Why?
I'm always out of breath, and the view from there is unbelievable. It's just beautiful, and it's just white. Everything is white. That's my favorite spot.
Sure. Okay. Road running, trail running, mountain running, running in mud. What is your favorite type of, or treadmill for that matter?
Mountain running, undoubtedly. Mountain running.
And when you say mountain running, this is like off-roading or on the roads or highways? How is it?
No, so it's cutting through the mountains. So you're going through the mountain passes. There are no roads. It is the only thing that makes it different from trail running is in trail running you will not find it to be rocky, and you will not find bouldering and things like that. So in mountain running it's very different. You're actually running through the mountains.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Whenever you're going through these dark phases, when you're in this longer runs, what are the positive reaffirmations that you tell yourself to keep going? Any 1, 2, 3, whatever.
There's biryani at the finish line. Just keep going.
All right. Any other motivation stuff that you tell
yourself? I have these all the time, and I just reflect on my training. I honestly do that. I reflect on my training, and I just keep telling myself, that there's a lot that has gone in to get me here. So I have to just keep moving, just putting one foot ahead of the other, and in no time I'll be there.
Awesome. Okay. What are your favorite sports movies?
Oh, I love Dangal. I keep watching that. I watch a very old movie called Jo Jeeta Wahi Sikandar.
Okay.
It's a very old movie. I have not had that much time to watch any other sport movies. I watch less stressful movies now. I watch more of cartoons with my kids. So yeah, these are just a few of the movies that I've watched.
Dangal is, by the way, 2 on 2. I was speaking with Nisha Millet the other day, and this is
Okay.
the first movie that she told me,
Yeah. Dangal
Dangal.
is my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite OTT platform? For binge watching, Netflix, Prime. There are so many Indian versions.
Netflix.
Okay. Any particular series that comes to your mind on?
So I was watching Money Heist.
Yeah.
Yeah, Money Heist, Narcos. So I have watched all the crime ones because they really, it's mind-boggling how these guys pull off these kind of things,
Yeah.
So I enjoy watching them. Yeah.
All
Now
right.
I'm watching Jurassic Park, that Camp Cretaceous, which is a cartoon, which is just
Okay.
with the kids.
Okay. How often do you recycle your shoes, change your shoes, and is there a month number or mileage? Why do you change your shoes, and how do you change your shoes?
So at any point of time, I have 3 pairs of shoes that I trade in. I don't use the same
Simultaneously.
shoes simultaneously. I don't run in the same pair every day. I change my shoes once in 3 months.
Okay.
It's also on the mileage, but also I feel that the kind of terrain I'm in, the sole wears out much faster. So that's the reason. So if you talk about mileage, it's closer to the 2000 mark where I chuck off the
2000 kilometers.
2000 kilometers where
Okay.
I get rid of the shoes. Yeah.
That's still probably like 1,000-1,200 kilometers more than what the so-called experts say, right? 900.
Yeah. But so I have a few shoes that they last me that long. So I use Hoka 11. So they're
Okay.
pretty good mountain running shoes. But if I were to use my road running shoes, it wouldn't last that long. So road
Okay.
running, I'll probably at half the mileage I would get rid of them.
Do you get them from abroad or do you order? How do you get them? Oh,
Yeah,
because
so I
Hoka
get
is
it
not
from-
available here right now.
Yes. So I get it from abroad. I get 6 to 8 pairs in one go.
Okay.
So that lasts me, and then then again I reorder.
All right. Okay. What is your favorite running apparel brand?
I used to in terms of apparels, I used to use a lot of WAA Ultra until I tried CEP, who I'm an athlete for currently. I love the CEP because the tees and the tees are especially they're the ultra light tees, so even though it's sweat, it doesn't become very heavy.
Okay.
And the compression tights are just too good. You can go in them about 18-19 hours, no problem, non-stop, and no fatigue at all.
Understood.
So
all right. Last question. What are your go-to foods before you go for your longer runs?
do you really want to know that?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. So so let's say my race is the next day morning. The previous day I don't eat very heavy. It's just very, very light food. Just
whatever happened to carb loading and
it doesn't work. It doesn't work, Nishant, just one night before. I mean, if you really want to know about carb loading, it works if you do it over a period of time. It doesn't happen in a week's time. It's just a myth. At least that's what I believe, that if you carb load 1 week, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. So I have my eggs, I have a lot of rice, but then at dinner time I have soups and I leave it at that. But when I'm on race day, just before my race, 1 hour before my race, I have peanut butter sandwiches. I take in my my pre-nutrition shake, which is again my Fasten Up. It's got berries, it's got a few things that just give you that buzz to it lifts up your spirit. So that's something I have, and then I also have a lot of khajur dates to before my race. So this is just it's a very simple thing that I have. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Tahir. That is the end of this section, and we have come to the end of the interview as well. Last, any parting shots or you would like to share with beginner runners, how to go about pursuing the sport, and should this sport be pursued full time? How can that be done?
Well, to everyone who's listening, I'm just going to tell you one thing: is that don't get in the race. this is your race and yours only.
Hmm.
Be true to yourself. Believe whatever that you believe in, you can achieve. Give yourself time and work towards it. You will achieve anything that you want. And this, if you're getting into the sport of running, it's a lifelong sport. It is not just a sport of 1 year or a 2 year sport. It's a lifelong sport. So you're going to be running all your life.
Yeah.
So enjoy every step that you take, because in every step there is joy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tahir, so much. I keep telling this to all my listeners or trainees that, have a 60-year, 70-year long vision. If you are 20, 30, 40 today, see yourself running for the next 60, 70 years. Have that kind of vision. Then what happens is your immediate gratification wale goals, they just seem doable also, but you're not just chasing them, right? If you start looking at 50, 60, 70 years. So thank you so much, Tahir. You have shared so many gems, so many motivational nuggets, so many tips and tricks. In fact, if it was up to me or, we would have done this for a couple of hours. There are so many things that still feel like, we can keep going and keep discussing.
No, thank you for hosting me. I'm sure, we'll get this opportunity again to catch up with you.
Yes.
Thank you, Nishad. Thank
you so much. Thank you, listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, head to Tahir's page today. Subscribe to him. Please feel free to DM him. I'm 100% sure he will answer all your ultra running questions, and we will bring you a next episode soon. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Train, endure, conquer.